are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar, free webinar, Elevating Board Performance with eGovernance. My name is Grant Lavac and I am your host for today's presentation. Over the course of the next hour, I'm going to highlight for you ways in which your nonprofit organization, or notably your board, can elevate its performance through the use of eGovernance, which can simply be defined as the strategic, conscious use of web-based technologies like video and web conferencing tools, as well as board governance software, to improve its governance, which is of really particular relevance in today's busy world, as we know that the work of boards is getting harder and harder. The stakes are going up, yet resources tend to be going down. So I'm hoping to provide you with some practical advice that you can follow, or at least start thinking about, that will help combine your board's passion and expertise with governance-focused technology in order to deliver tangible results. And we're going to look at a couple real-world cloud-based solutions that can support and promote good governance, as well as help create your ideal board, one that is fully engaged in the stewardship of your nonprofit's mission and interactive in its governance role, without relying solely on printed reports for business intelligence. And today's webinar will also include a brief demonstration of the popular BoardEffect board governance platform, which we at the Matrix on Board Group provide within Australia. And BoardEffect can significantly reduce the amount of time spent on board meeting and board paper preparation, allowing greater time to be spent on higher value work and board engagement and communication. Now, before we get underway, I have just a couple housekeeping points for you. Those of you that are new to GoToWebinar, if you haven't used it before, there are a number of ways that you can interact during today's session. If you're listening in on your computer's speakers or headphones and are having trouble hearing the audio, you can switch over to the telephone option, away from the default of mic and speakers to telephone, and you'll be prompted to dial in on a landline number. You'll be provided with the access number on screen. If you have a question or a technical issue during today's session, you can raise your hand by selecting the raised hand icon and then simply type in your questions or comments into the question window at the bottom of your control panel. So give it a quick test now if you like. You might like to tell me where it is you're joining us from today. Where around the country are you attending today's webinar? And whilst you're doing that, I'll also let you know that we have we'll be conducting some interactive polls during today's webinar, so I do ask that you please do participate and join in on the fun. All right, looks like we've got a couple of people joining us from around the country. So let's see where we've got Stephen joining us from Adelaide, Peter joining us from Sydney, Sophie from Darwin. Wow, welcome, up early up there. So thanks for taking the time out of your morning to join us this early. Angela also from Darwin, so welcome. So good to see we've got a bit of an interesting mix of people from around the country this morning. And on a final note, today's webinar is being recorded as well, so and a copy will be made available to you shortly after today's session, actually from tomorrow. So if you have any colleagues or key staff that have been unable to attend or might find value in the content, you're welcome to share that recording with them. Last but not least, if you need to minimize your GoToWebinar control panel to the side of screen, you can do that easily by selecting the white arrow in the orange box. That will move the control panel to the side of your screen. Just remember, though, that you need to maximize it, bring it back into view if you want to type any questions in throughout today's webinar or opine. All right, so for those of you who do not know who we are and what we do at the Matrix on Board Group, we've been supporting non-profit organisations around Australia since 1997 and really believe that strong and successful non-profits are not only essential to a just society, but that many of them can find it difficult to focus on the business side of their organization. So via our various divisions, which you can see on screen, we essentially provide capacity building, financial management services, training and development, and a selection of online tools so that our nonprofit clients have clearer plans, stronger finances, and an increased capacity to achieve their mission. And my role at Matrix is really to manage and support the suite of online solutions, including BoardEffect, that are really designed to support good governance, streamline the work of nonprofit boards, and help free them to focus more on their mission, not on their admin. But enough about me. I'm kind of interested to learn who you are and the role that you play at your nonprofit organization. So what we might do is launch our first of several interactive polls today, and I'll ask, you should see some questions up here on screen there, asking you which role applies to you at your nonprofit organization. Obviously, I ask this question as I'm obviously always interested to learn who my audience is, but also keen to highlight ways in which e-governance solutions can create efficiencies not only for your board members, but specifically to your role, whether you're in a senior management or in a support capacity. So it looks like almost everyone has cast their response there. So let's close off the results of those polls, and I'll share the results with you on screen. So we can see that the majority of us in the room today are in a senior management capacity, which is great. I assume that a lot of you play a very heavy role in board meeting preparation and board paper production and dissemination. So I'm quite excited to show you how e-governance can certainly streamline your works and free up a lot of time so you can commit more of that energy and effort into higher value work. So good to see that we've got some board members in the room as well, and those also in a support capacity too. All right, so let me hide the results of those polls. We're going to have a couple other polls throughout today's session. But before we dive on in, this poll kind of leads me into my next question, which is, what is it that's prompted you to attend today's webinar? What frustrates you about your current governance processes? And for those of you that answered that question on registration for today's webinar, I do thank you. That was greatly appreciated. Gave me some good insight. And you may wish to re-offer those responses for us now. So have a think about some of the challenges you might currently be faced with and that you're wanting technology, online solutions, to help you overcome. I'll give you a couple of points to think about. Are you wanting your board members to come more prepared to your board meetings and ready to make informed decisions? Does the prospect of moving your board away from its reliance on paper-based meetings or processes to more of a secure and readily available and accessible paperless approach get you excited? Is that something that you're excited about? Maybe you're not happy with the level of communication and collaboration your board is engaging in between meetings. Or are you simply just wanting to learn a little bit more about the different types of online technologies, e-governance tools that are available to help elevate your board's performance? So using your chat window at the bottom of your control panel, tell me in a few words or a sentence what it is you're wanting to take away from today's webinar. A couple of comments have already come through, which is good to see. Stephen's wanting to look at ways in which he can improve his board's preparedness for board and committee meetings. Notes that too much time is currently being spent bringing everyone up to speed following the last board meeting. Interesting. Jenny says, looking for different ways in which she can improve the board's access to secure information rather than relying on sending sensitive information via email. Some other points: improve overall effectiveness of the board and enhance decision-making, greater transparency amongst board members. So certainly a few of those points have been echoed around the room as well. Peter notes, improve my preparedness for board meetings, preparing papers, etc., and having the board members actually read them. Greater level of engagement amongst the board as well. So great to see we've got a good mix of reasons why you guys are in the room today. And the good news is that we'll be able to address a lot of those challenges in today's session. We'll highlight how technology can help overcome those challenges and resolve them for you. So keep those challenges parked there for the moment. I'm going to come back to those a little later on and highlight how technology can help you overcome those difficulties. So to begin, where do we start? And to do that, I really want to start at the ground level and do a bit of a revisit on some Governance 101. Now, there are many different ways we can obviously define governance, but a good one that comes to mind, particularly in doing my homework for today's webinar, is the Australian Stock Exchange's Corporate Governance Councils, which highlights that governance is really a system, not a single policy or document. It has different parts that are interacting together. And if we want to build on that further, the Australian Institute of Company Directors offers a great starting point for non-profits in helping them determine what constitutes good governance practice for their organisations and help them to achieve better outcomes through good governance. They published a great guide some years ago now titled Good Governance Principles and Guidance for Non-Profit Organisations, which outlines 10 key principles that boards can refer to when considering what makes for good governance for their organisation. And in brief, without going into a whole lot of detail, these are roles and responsibilities, so having clearly defined individual director responsibilities, organisational expectations of directors and the role of the board. Board composition, ensuring that you have the right group of people, taking into account different skill sets and expertise and experience, and how the addition of an individual builds the collective capability and effective functioning of the board. Purpose and strategy, the board's role in setting the vision, purpose and strategies for the organisation and adapting the direction or plans as appropriate. Risk, having appropriate systems of risk oversight and internal controls in place to increase the likelihood that their organisation will deliver on its purpose. Organisation performance, determining and assessing appropriate performance categories and indicators to measure how the organisation is actually delivering on its purpose. The big one, board effectiveness, careful forward planning of board-related activities, so board meetings being run in an efficient manner, for example, regular assessments of board performance, having a board succession plan in place, the effective use of subcommittees, etc. Integrity and accountability, having those systems in place whereby there is a flow of information to the board that aids in decision making, having transparency and accountability to external stakeholders, and the integrity of the financial statements and other key information, and that it is safeguarded. Organisation building, the board's role in enhancing the capacity and capabilities of the organisations they serve. Culture and ethics, how the board sets the tone for ethical and responsible decision-making throughout the organisation. And the final one there being engagement, how the board helps an organisation to engage effectively with its stakeholders. So now in principle, while these are a great set of 10 commandments that non-profit boards can and should follow in their quest for good governance, in reality, fulfilling these governance values isn't an easy feat. It's not as easy as it sounds. And the reason for that, the reason why, is that over the last 2 decades, governance has, as I'm sure many of you would agree, governance has become more and more of a challenging endeavour than ever before. Overwhelmingly, resources are scarcer, requiring organisations to do more with less. Scandals in the corporate, public and non-profit sectors have resulted in increased pressure and scrutiny on boards and from regulators and stakeholders, particularly for the non-profit world with the ACNC. You know, some would argue that red tape has increased significantly, even though the goal is to reduce red tape. And to kind of illustrate the point of these challenges, we can refer to a great quote on screen from Nancy Axelrod, who was a speaker at last year's BoardEffect conference in Washington, D.C., and she's also an award-winning author around non-profit governance. Her point is simply that for non-profit boards and for people who support those boards, the risks are going up. The scrutiny is rising and overall the pressure is escalating, and yet the resources aren't necessarily going up correspondingly to match that risk level. And in many cases they're actually going down, with revenue being lost as a result of diminished public funding or grants wrapping up over time, etc. And so there's this expectation that directors and senior management are able to spot issues on the horizon well and truly before they've arrived, recognize their implications, and then create a solid plan well and truly in advance of their arrival. And to perform in this new reality, board members and senior management really do need to have significant talent, discipline, and focus, and they must work significantly harder and smarter than ever before. And there's a wonderful book out there titled Governance as Leadership, Reframing the Work of Nonprofit Boards by Richard Chait, William Ryan, and Barbara Taylor, which provides a great vocabulary for defining this expansion of board responsibilities. They note that boards must routinely operate in and fluidly transition amongst three distinct modes of governance if they are able to reach the highest levels of performance. And those are the fiduciary mode, which most of you folks will be familiar with, where essentially the board's focus is on providing, fiscal accountability, that stewardship of assets. They're looking at the legal accountability and really serving as sentinels, asking the questions like, how much is it going to cost? How much will it cost? But boards also need to be behaving in a strategic way, however. That brings us to the second mode of governance. When the board is serving as strategic partners to management, setting priorities, ensuring the organization has the right strategy, creating and monitoring plans, and asking the question, how will this impact our stakeholders and our constituents? And the third and final mode is the generative mode, where the board's focus is on serving as sense makers, determining which issues the organization should grapple with, deciding on what needs to be decided, questioning assumptions, asking probing questions, and framing the problems that need to be addressed, helping to attain future vision, and asking the question, how does this fit our mission? And how does it help us advance and support the fulfillment of our mission? Generative boards are more nimble and often more proactive, but operating in this mode also requires a greater level of investment of board members' time and brain space. This in turn demands that organizations provide tools that optimize collaboration and transparency, but also minimize distractions for board members. And if we come back to Nancy for a second, she sums up those three modes of governance perfectly with the quote you can see on screen. In addition to oversight, fiduciary, boards need to provide insight, strategic, and if possible, foresight, generative. So in this environment where you've got stakes going up, resources going down, complexities rearing their heads, where can you turn? Where can you look for assistance? And the answer to that question in many industries is technology. When implemented with prudence and strategic foresight, technology can be invaluable, and that's what we're going to focus on from here on in. And I know a few of you have got questions which I'm going to come back to a little later on, and we can address those as we go. So we will have certainly ample opportunities for questions throughout today's session. So I have parked a few of your questions. So talking about technology, when implementing technology, it's imperative that you do your homework. If you're considering making a move to the cloud, if you're thinking about moving your nonprofit or your board to the cloud or adopting a new cloud-based application, you should be asking potential cloud providers and vendors tough questions like, where is your data going to be stored? What's the data retention policy? What are the disaster recovery measures? Are there any hidden costs? This is all going to help you assess whether or not their solution is going to be a good fit for your organization. So you should always take the time to plan your move or any transition. Don't plan to fail simply by failing to plan. Identify your needs and goals and get buy-in from the board and key staff early on, which is part one of that best practice implementation plan you can see on screen. Then do your research. Look at suitable solutions that are going to be well matched to your needs, to your needs that you identify. Have a progressive rollout strategy in place for your chosen solution. This will help ensure that your transition period is a smooth and pain-free one. And finally, step 4, assess and evaluate your results to determine if the solutions achieved exactly what you wanted them to achieve from day one. So that is just in summary, best practice implementation you can follow without going into great detail. If you do your homework, moving the work of your nonprofit to the cloud can be a relatively pain-free experience and allow you to start reaping the benefits from day one. And just on the cloud, so I don't alienate or overwhelm anyone in today's webinar by incorrectly making the assumption that everyone in the room is going to hold the same level of IT literacy, let me offer you a very brief introduction or overview to the cloud. Or for those of you that are already well versed in the cloud and use of cloud-based solutions, it might serve as a brief refresher for you. The cloud is simply a term that refers to the online space that you can use to store your data. It means essentially that you no longer need to buy, build, install, and operate expensive computer hardware. The cloud can offer nonprofits a vast improvement in collaboration, particularly amongst busy board members as well as staff, and perhaps most importantly, provide timely access to important information. And really, if you think about it, in a world not so long ago, paper was the only way to get resources pushed out to your decision makers. And more often than not, so much time and energy was then being spent at board meetings just getting everyone on the same page since the meeting prior. So today's cloud has made it possible for everyone involved in the governance process to access information much faster, share documents and edit them, saving countless hours of catch-up at meetings and allowing a lot of pre-meeting prep work to get done beforehand. And in terms of benefits, the cloud really has a lot to offer, and it really does surpass the do-it-yourself, the DIY approach. The cloud eliminates the need for you to worry about maintaining or updating your own physical server that you might have had sitting on site for the last few years. The cloud really, above and beyond what you can see on screen there in benefits, it really can offer you top-flight, peace of mind with top-flight security and safeguards that are designed to ensure that your data is well and truly protected, that access 24/7, 365, anywhere, anytime, on any device that has the ability to connect to the internet. And finally, all of the data backups are taken care of for you. So again, you don't need to worry about that. That's one less thing you need to focus on. But having said that, despite the numerous benefits that the cloud has to offer, not all cloud solutions and cloud providers are created equal. It's important to remember that all nonprofit needs, budgets, concerns, and priorities are very different. So there is really no one-size-fits-all answer about whether a cloud-based solution is going to be the right fit for your organization. So that brings me back to that best practice implementation. It's important you go back and take the time to do your homework. Plan, research, roll out, and evaluate. And we really could spend the entire webinar today, just talking exclusively about the cloud, and we'd still really only scratch the surface. So if you feel that you're one of those nonprofits that's maybe lacking a little bit in the knowledge area to explore the cloud a bit further, it's holding you back, or if maybe you already do have a good understanding of the cloud's implications and you simply want to learn more and discover how your nonprofit can further benefit, do take a look at Tech Impact's great little comprehensive ebook, Cloud Computing for Nonprofits. The nice thing is it's free to download via that link on screen. It's actually a very easy read. And remember, if you miss any of the links in today's session, this webinar recording will certainly be available for you to go back over and pick up on any of this information that you haven't noted. And I'll certainly be happy to answer any specific questions or refer back to any links to individuals throughout this session. All right, so let us use that basic overview or refresher that we have on the cloud to have a look at launch our second interactive poll and explore some of the cloud-based solutions that your nonprofit is currently using. I'm really interested to learn what you're currently doing and see if I can help you discover where there might be where some untapped opportunities might lie for you. So let's launch our second poll there on screen, and you'll see that pop up there in a moment. There we go. So what cloud-based solutions is your nonprofit currently using to promote good governance? Are you currently using a customer relationship management solution, or more commonly referred to as a constituent relationship management, CRM solution, to manage your donors and monitor your fundraising efforts? Are you using cloud accounting to keep an eye on the financial pulse of your nonprofit? Maybe you're currently using an intranet or file hosting solution for secure access to important information online. So we can see that Quite a few of you have voted. Some of you are using MyOb in the cloud as a cloud accounting solution, which is great. Moving away from those install on your server or device type legacy programs we're all accustomed to in the past. Let me close off the results of that poll now and share the results with you. So maybe not too surprisingly is that the majority of you in the room are, in one form or another, using file hosting services. So the Google Drives or the Dropboxes or the Microsoft OneDrives of the world to have that anytime, anywhere access to important information. And you can see 40% equally are using, some of you are already using video and web conferencing tools for virtual and remote meetings, which is fantastic. So you can engage in discussion and collaborate on important topics in between meetings if it's not feasible to meet face-to-face. And those of you, some of you are using an internal intranet as well, maybe as opposed to a file hosting service. So you've got your own, secure members-only back-end area of your website where your board members can access that information. And some of you using other tools like Evernote as well for quick and easy access to important information, note-taking, that sort of thing. Excellent. So some wonderful examples of where you guys are currently using cloud-based solutions, which is great. And what we're now going to do is, I'm not going to really touch on the file hosting services and the intranet and the web-based evaluation tools so much, but what we're going to focus on is those eGovernance tools, namely video and web conferencing and board governance software, and look at ways in which they can be of benefit not only to your board members, but particularly to your role in that senior management capacity, as the majority of you in the room today are in that space, even though some of you are in a board member role as well as in support staff as well. So where do we begin? Let's have a look at and talk very briefly about cloud-based video and web conferencing tools. Again, some of you already well versed in the use of these tools, so apologies in advance if this comes across as a little bit rudimentary stuff. But for those of you that don't have a good handle on it, video and web conferencing tools are really a great way to improve board effectiveness through the facilitation of online collaboration in or between meetings while saving significant travel time and expenses. Particularly useful if your board or your committees are geographically dispersed and say you have, as an example, a crucial issue that needs to be discussed, but it's not feasible or financially viable to meet face-to-face to resolve the issue. If everyone on the board or the committee can commit to a date and time, you can easily meet online in a remote virtual environment and discuss the important topics that way. And you can even collaborate online in that session using some great whiteboard and annotational tools that are available in a lot of today's video and web conferencing tools. Another example might be, say you're struggling to meet a quorum at your board meetings. Why not think about offering virtual meetings, virtual online meetings, and giving your board members the opportunity to attend remotely, particularly when they might be traveling interstate or if they're on business in another part of the world. Of course, you should always check what your constitution says. First, see if there are any restrictions in place on using these kinds of tools for board and committee meetings, but you'll probably find that they serve as a nice, pain-free way of, and cost-effective way of helping your board communicate and collaborate on important topics, not only in meetings, but certainly in between meetings as well. So let's use that as a bit of a segue and look at some examples of some popular video and web conferencing solutions that are out there in the marketplace today. The major players in the video and web conferencing game include Skype, which no doubt everyone in the room has heard of, Google Hangouts, Uber Conference, one of the new ones, and GoToMeeting. And all of them utilize what is called Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP for short. And by the way, there's a lot of other great solutions that are out there as well. I've just simply chosen these 4 popular ones to focus on in today's session. There's WebEx, there's Redback Conferencing, there's a whole slew of other ones that are out there as well. So a lot of organizations these days tend to switch to VoIP including some of the solutions you see on screen, because they often have a higher quality sound than your telephone, a lower per line cost, a significant decrease in maintenance, the fact that it runs over one network wirelessly. They're accessible on multiple devices, including desktops, laptops, tablets, and even smartphones nowadays. And generally the fact that they offer more and more features and options than your typical telephone. So if we look at them individually one by one quite briefly, you know, without a doubt, Skype is the most popular, the most well-known and used solution around the globe, as they really were the pioneers in at-home video conferencing. And I'm sure many of you in the room have at one point or another used it to interact with friends or family from all over the world, or you might actually even be using it for some of your remote meetings you know, in your current work day to day. Whilst it is free to use, Skype, it limits group calls, group video and calls to a select number of people, but you can pay a small premium, you know, small monthly premium, or move over to a business plan to increase the number of participants on your call at any one time. Yeah, Skype, a really, really easy to use solution, and one that I use fairly regularly in conjunction with a few others that we're going to look at. The next one, Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts were originally designed for public video conferencing, but you can easily make your video conference calls private. You will, of course, the one downside, if you want to look at it that way, is you do need to be a Google user. You do need to have a Gmail account before being able to use the application, and that also includes your participants in on the call. They need to be a Gmail user, but the service is free, and Google's robust servers mean that you are not likely to experience any significant interruptions in session. Hangouts are, however, limited to, I believe, 10 participants at a time, but there are no time limits on a session, which is always good. Uber Conference is one of the newest players in the game, and really gives you an easy and powerful pain-free way to schedule and run audio conferences, all without requiring those annoying PIN numbers that often you need to enter in if you've ever used an audio conference application or service in the past. The free version of Uber Conference caters for up to 10 callers at a time. Got some great high-definition audio, quality audio, call recording capabilities, single sign-on, so if you're a LinkedIn user, Facebook or Google account user, you can just use your sign-in for those applications to dial on in. You can lock calls for extra security, and there's a selection of mobile apps across multiple devices that you can use. You can upgrade for as little as, I think it's $10 a month, and have your own local dial-in number if you want it to be the same every single time. You can access outbound calling to participants, recurring conferences. You can even actually set up international dial-ins amongst many other things as well. They also offer some good pro features, which comes with its own toll-free number for, I think, around about an extra $20 a month. So it is a nice little tool. The last one, and the one that I love the most, though, and the final example we're going to look at, is GoToMeeting by Citrix. Now, you're using one of Citrix's products today, the GoToWebinar platform, which caters for delivering large presentations to large audiences, up to 100 people at a time. But GoToMeeting is a great little program. It does operate on a monthly subscription and allows for up to 25 attendees per meeting. And both the screen sharing capabilities and audio quality are excellent. Using GoToWebinar today, hopefully many of you are enjoying the crisp audio that's coming through on your end. I'm using a headset to utilize VoIP in today's session, so it's delivering a far more crisper sound than if I was using a telephone. With GoToMeeting, however, I think you can utilize, even though it gives you the opportunity to extend the use of the tool to 25 participants at a time, I think you can now even utilize a free license forever if you've got no more than 3 participants on a call at any one time. So it's going to be free for you. You don't have to pay anything. And quite nicely in GoToMeeting, you can record your meetings. Attendees can use their computer's microphone and speakers or VoIP for audio, like I'm doing today. Or if you prefer, you can simply dial into a dedicated landline number from your telephone or your mobile. So you don't have to use VoIP if you don't have, a set of microphone or speakers connected to your computer, if you don't have a headset. Overall, however, GoToMeeting, an excellent tool for online meetings or even simply online collaboration on those important topics in between meetings. And there's also some great whiteboard and annotation tools in GoToMeeting that allows you to make notes and highlight information on screen in sessions, so you can actually do some nice prep work, visual prep work in the actual session, rather than it just being two-way conversation verbally. You can actually give your attendees the ability to actually make notes on the screen if they're driving and delivering a particular portion of a meeting or collaboration session. If you haven't used GoToMeeting before and you're keen to take it for a test drive, you can utilize a free 30-day trial just by going to their website, obviously. So, and just so you know, none of the solutions that I'm talking about today, the Matrix on Board group doesn't receive any kickbacks or referral fees or commission or anything like that. I'm really just using these for popular solutions as real-world examples of tools that you can start using quickly and easily without outlaying a lot of money. All right, so let us now transition on to board governance platforms, another great e-governance tool that you can use. Board governance tools really can make for a great alternative to those file hosting services that some of you guys, the majority of you guys, are currently using, the Google Drives, Dropboxes, OneDrives of the world, and even a great alternative to your own internal intranet. All of those file hosting services and having your own internal intranet, all great ways of doing things, but you might agree with me in that more often than not, they can take some time to customize, manage, and maintain. And of course, with file hosting services, the ones that I've mentioned, you pay for what you use. So if you've got a significant amount of data, you could be potentially paying some big bucks for it. Board governance software, however, is really designed for the express purpose of arranging and making securely accessible important data, records, policies, resources, all that important information that your board members need to access anywhere, when they need it most, anywhere, anytime. And the use of a board governance platform isn't necessarily restricted to your board members only. Any and all members of the organization that are focused around or involved in the governance process, whether it be your board members, senior management, the majority of you in the room, support staff, your IT personnel, your committee members, any of them can utilize a board governance platform on a consistent basis and be focused on all three of those modes of governance that we talked about earlier. While let's not forget that while boards clearly can operate in all three of those governance modes without the use of software, the BoardEffect, the board governance platforms, including BoardEffect, really help make it possible for boards to operate routinely in the generative mode, reach those high levels of performance, and produce better outcomes for the non-profit organizations they govern. And really that's what we believe is the key. Boards being able to operate simultaneously and move very fluidly across all those three modes of governance, with the board governance platform really playing an important role in enabling that and ultimately in supporting those high-performing boards. And the best board governance platforms out there today are usually the ones that are nimble enough to keep up with evolving board demands, while at the same time helping boards raise their levels of performance in each of those modes of governance, fiduciary, strategic, generative. So on that note, without talking any more about background on board governance platforms, let me offer you an introduction to the BoardEffect board governance platform. BoardEffect is really a 100% web-based board governance platform, and it's ready to go from day one. It doesn't require any customization. You can simply start adding content from day one. It's flexible to meet the demands of different sized nonprofits and various board structures, whether your organization has a single board or multiple boards. And it's a completely mobile solution that allows not only your board members but your committees, senior management, key staff, support teams, that ability to securely access all the important information they need when they need it. As I said before, anywhere, anytime, on any device, as long as it has the ability to connect to the internet. So whether you, as a board member, prefer to use a desktop computer day in, day out, you've got a laptop, you're out and about, or if you're always on the go using a tablet device like the iPad, or even if you have a smartphone like an iPhone, the fact that you can access all of your important information across any of these devices really does make BoardEffect good governance on the go. A completely mobile solution. And in terms of the key features and functionality, looking at them at a glance, that can help streamline your workflow and create efficiencies for your board members, committee members, senior management support staff. BoardEffect can allow you to quickly and easily create dynamic board meeting agendas, so eliminating the need for you to produce your own agenda, like you probably used to doing that in Microsoft Word, as creating your own agenda document. The ability to create and deliver one-click board papers, board books, in as little as 2 hours, not 2 days if you're following that old create and deliver the hard copies or compile and distill all the papers into one PDF and send it via email. BoardEffect allows your committees or working groups to conduct their work in private so that they can discuss the important issues when they need to. Schedule upcoming meetings in collaboration with your board members or committee members. You can control what, when, and how your board committee members access the important information you want them to be privy to. And you can also alert your board members to what they need to know from the very second they log into the platform or access the BoardEffect iPad app, which we're going to come to a little later on. That's not all as well. I mean, there's many of other things I could mention, and that BoardEffect can provide your board members with tools to increase their effectiveness, including access to an online board manual, or if you have an orientation or an induction manual, finding key meeting dates and key contact information for fellow board members, participating in polls and online discussions, searching for historical records, and completing online surveys that you could use to formulate part of your formalized board evaluation process. So what I want to do now is show you a very quick real-time demonstration of eGovernance in action with BoardEffect, with the BoardEffect Board Governance platform. To do that, I'm going to jump on over to a web browser, and I use Google Chrome as my preferred web browser here at Matrix, but you can use any web browser when you're accessing the BoardEffect Board Governance platform. And when you log in, you land on what we call the home page, or what is probably a better way to describe it is the dashboard, where potentially you can alert your board members to a lot of great information from the very second they access the dashboard. And let me give you case in points and point out some areas for you on screen. You can see at the top right we've got the ability to post important news and announcements, so your board members and committee members can be up to date with what they need to know. You can you can issue surveys that your board members could use to complete their formalized board evaluation process, or if you have a formalized board member self-assessment or evaluation, they can do that securely via BoardEffect. RSVPs allow you to, as a board member, submit your commitment to an upcoming meeting, so your senior management team, your meeting organizers know well and truly in advance who's planning to be in attendance, who's planning to be absent, and that summary information can help to inform an attendance record. So you can inform and compose your attendance record within BoardEffect. You can also use polls, a great way to, if you've got motions or circular resolutions or maybe important documents that need approval, like a minutes of meeting document, that document can be attached to a poll, and then all board members can cast their response and any comments that they want. So it can be quickly and easily done, not only in session, but also in between meetings if you've got those crucial topics for discussion and that need to be collaborated on. And you can always export the results of any poll as a PDF, so you've got a soft copy or hard copy audit trail. A few other things you can see. The first thing we see is obviously this welcome message. Just a nice first impression communication tool. Very nice way of, it could be a personalized message from the chair, late breaking news for the organization, or just generic info about what BoardEffect allows your board members to do. Last few things I just wanted to show you on the dashboard is that we have the ability to extend the use of BoardEffect to committees as well. BoardEffect allows you to set up new committees, change board member committee assignments, provide permissions to select board members to perform specific tasks within that committee workroom, and provide important information to the right people. So if I'm a member of the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee, I can access my own private committee workroom where I can access committee meeting materials in private. I can engage in discussion via polls or online discussions or live talk, online chat sessions. So some great tools that we can use to engage in conversation and collaborate on those important topics in between meetings, not just in the meeting itself. We have access to a board action calendar, so I can view and save important calendar information to my local calendar. I can view the board directory to reach out to other board members, communicate with them via email, or just retrieve their key contact information if I need to. And the important one being the resource library. Think of it as your paperless filing cabinet, your centralized online repository of important board, committee, and wider organizational information. So it kind of acts as that file hosting service that you might be using, the Google Drives, the Dropboxes and the OneDrives. BoardEffect allows you to store any type of information. It doesn't have to be limited to a document. It can be a video file, an audio file, or an executable file, where you can store them via these customizable folders that run down the left. And I'll just let you know up front, there's no restriction as to how much data you can populate BoardEffect with. You're not going to be subject to the pay for what you use setup that file hosting services will often hit you with. So the resource library, case in point, if you are a board member, your board members want to access some historical information, there's nothing stopping them having access to not only board meeting minutes, but also key financial reporting information. If I want to look in particular subfolders for, by fiscal year, I can see what type of document is available for me to download via the thumbnail, title and description if one's available, and then basic version control. So I can quickly and easily download that particular file to my device, my desktop computer or laptop, and then view this financial dashboard report offline if I need to. So even if it's in a board meeting and I've got my laptop in the meeting, there's nothing stopping me quickly and easily moving over to the resource library and looking at, historical information, policies, procedures, minutes, whatever it might be that I need to access then and there without having to trudging through a filing cabinet for hard copies or going through my emails. Everything is in the one place. All right, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the BoardEffect board governance platform that you see on screen, but I do want to show you how quickly and easily your board members can access their board papers and other important information like committee meeting materials. So you can see, and this is of particular importance for the senior managers in the room, is it will show you how quickly and easily you can publish your papers in BoardEffect and then disseminate them securely to your board members. So when your board members log in to the BoardEffect board governance platform, in the center console, center of screen, they're presented with a list of meetings that they're associated with and that they can access the board papers for. So if we look at this example of the meeting on the 27th of February, I can click on this link and be taken directly to the board papers, which I can see were last updated about a week ago. If I want to actually look at a little bit more detailed information for this meeting, I can look at some great overview information where I'm presented with in the top right of screen the meeting particulars, the when and the where, and if I haven't taken the liberty of saving that information already to my local calendar, I can. So if I want to save it to my Outlook calendar, all my meeting information, meeting dates are in there. It certainly is. I can respond to a meeting invite. I can tell the CEO or the meeting organizer that I do plan to be in attendance or I can't attend and reasons as to why I can't attend. And then meeting organizers can use that information to help inform that attendance record like I mentioned. So you can actually down the track, maybe 6 or 12 months down the line, if you're required to report on board meeting attendance, or you use it as a measure of board performance, you can actually pull some great data out of BoardEffect on board member attendance or committee member attendance. Saves you having to tally up that attendance information manually, going back over minutes of meeting documents, when BoardEffect can pull that information out of the tool for you straight away. Providing this information, your attendance records are an accurate reflection of your board meeting attendance. And last but not least, the actual meeting book itself, accessing the board paper. We can see when it was last updated and that it has been published. Green tick means it's good to go. So I can go into this board paper, the February board paper, and I can view the agenda right on screen. And there's a lot of great information that I can look at here. I can see who's the facilitator for the meeting in question, who are all of the invitees, and then each of the individualized and customized agenda categories for this particular meeting. And you can see there's timings locked against the agenda categories, presented details, action items. We can lay notes against each item as well. So all of that information can be captured within BoardEffect, eliminating the need for you to customize and generate your own meeting agenda. BoardEffect can do it for you. And I'll show you an example of what that's going to look like in a second. So there are kind of 4 key ways that your board members can quickly and easily access their board papers. First and foremost, if I want to just download the minutes from the last meeting, maybe I'm traveling and I'm not using a computer that is regularly my own, I can just simply maybe download the minutes to that document, view it offline, and then delete it from that device if I need to. So I can access individualized content that has been uploaded. And the nice thing for you senior managers in the room, if you're the ones that create the board papers, you'll note that BoardEffect can accept any type of document. You can upload a PDF, a Word document, an Excel document, a PowerPoint. There's no restriction as to what type of document you can upload into BoardEffect, because then quite nicely, once you've published the meeting book, your board members can, at the click of a button, one click to download their papers as one printer-friendly PDF. And the advantage of that, providing your board members have a basic understanding of how to view a PDF document using maybe Adobe Reader as their preferred PDF viewing application, they can then view the paper. Let me just make sure I've got the right file here. They can view the board paper offline. And here's an example of what the board paper would look like. BoardEffect has automatically created the cover page for us. It has also automatically created a very basic looking agenda, which if I punch in a little bit, I've used different color to display the dynamic formatting that is available to you within BoardEffect. You can change font size, bold, italicize, page references. It's a fairly basic looking agenda, so if your agenda documents are not too complicated, they don't have a lot of imagery, tables, formatting, why not let BoardEffect do it for you? It's going to save you the time having to create that document yourself. So I imagine you'd much prefer spend that time on higher value work or engagement with, if you're a board member, engagement with your fellow board members if you're involved in the agenda creation process. But quite nicely, if you're used to viewing a PDF document, you'll be no stranger to the bookmarks functionality. BoardEffect has preserved all of these agenda categories now as bookmarks in the finished printer-friendly PDF. So again, you don't need to worry about what you may have done in the past, distill those different document format types into one PDF and create all of these different bookmarks and page number every page. BoardEffect's going to do it for you. So your board members can jump to wherever they want within the board paper, and all of their key information is on screen. And then if they're familiar with using the very basic annotational tools within, say, Adobe Reader, they can place their talking notes, their reminders on talking points and discussion points. Probably not too different to what they're currently doing if they're accessing their papers in PDF format. or then just simply printing it out as a hard copy. We're not saying your board members can't have a hard copy. They can. Just now they can access the papers the very second that you publish it. The third way, which I'll quickly touch on, is the ability for your board members to access their board papers online in real time whilst logged into the BoardEffect board governance platform. Now this is really handy if they're traveling quite a bit. They don't want to download the board papers to their computer or laptop because it's going to stay local to that device if they're traveling a bit, or if they just want to work solely in the online space. We can jump to whatever section we want of the board paper, and you can see that on screen. So I can view all of the information as I need to, and then I can actually start to annotate. I'll just maximize the screen. I just zoom out a little bit for you, move across. You can see I've done some prep work already on this information. Maybe I'll move to the financial info on the next screen. I can use some very basic annotational tools to draw my attention to key figures, key bits of information. I can highlight, I can strike through on action items, underline, I can place sticky notes for those reminders on talking points. I can do all of my prep work securely online whilst I'm logged into BoardEffect, and nicely then save all of my annotations, locking them against my user account so no one else will be privy to these annotations that I've authored. No one else will see them. So then if I need to come back into the board meeting a day before the meeting and actually view everything online again, I can, or I can actually download my own personalized annotated copy of the board paper with all of the markups that I made online retained in that offline copy. I can further annotate in Adobe Reader if I want to, or I can simply print off my own annotated hard copy and walk in and my information is right in front of me ready to go. So again, we're not saying that hard copies are the devil. Certainly you have the facility to move to a secure and readily accessible paperless approach with BoardEffect, but we're catering to board members' preferred choice preferences. If I just show you quickly what that page of there is the annotated information. You could see we made that only a few seconds ago online, and now I've exported my personalized annotated version of the board paper. So really quite nice, secure and readily accessible way of doing things. Before I come to the fourth mode of access for your board members, which is the BoardEffect iPad app, and there's soon to be an Android app available from April of this year. So at the moment the BoardEffect app is exclusive to the iPad. I want to just get a feel for those of you in the room, how many of your board members are currently using tablet devices like the iPad as part of their board work. So just want to get an idea as to how many of you in the room, if your board members are utilizing mobile as part of their day-to-day. And so take a couple of seconds just to cast your responses there, and I can see most of you have actually done that. So let me close off the results of the poll and share the results with you. Quite exciting to see and encouraging to see that 67% of you in the room, your board members are using mobile devices as part of their board work, which is absolutely wonderful to see. And the reason I say that, and for those 33% of you in the room, your board members are yet to adopt mobile, let me just paint a picture for you. The reason I ask that question is that it's important to know that the tablet market has and is continually becoming a bigger part of the mobile computing landscape. Studies are now showing that 42% of American adults currently own tablets, and the sales are reflecting that. Market intelligence research firms like Gartner and the IDC suggest that tablets will outsell PCs in the coming years, not by 2015. They're a little off on their figures there. This data was from last year. But you can see that although the tablet growth rate is slowing, PC sales are declining even more. So tablets are going to be the preferred device of choice in the near future. There's this clear and present trend that people are now preferring to access all of their important information via these devices as opposed to traditional PCs. And I certainly know that's true for me. and might be the same case for those of you in the room. So this is where your board members who are always on the go or geographically dispersed can benefit from the mobility that the BoardEffect board governance platform has to offer with the BoardEffect iPad app. The BoardEffect iPad app really just gives your board members that quick and easy and secure access to all of their important information. For example, they can download their board papers or their committee papers to their device. They're sitting on the device for offline viewing. If there's a progressive rollout of updates to the paper, they can be downloaded as well. So you don't have to make your board papers available all at one go and wait for every document to be finalized. You can have a staggered or progressive rollout of updates that your board members can download over time, and any prep work that they do, their annotations will be preserved. It's really quite easy for your board members to annotate their board papers via the iPad app. They can use their finger as a stylus to draw on screen. They can freeform highlight key bits of information, really place all their notes and important talking points so that when they're in the board meeting, their iPad is in front of them and all of their discussion points are on screen. Really, the very second that you publish your papers, they can access and start preparing for the upcoming meeting. So I want to show you very quickly what life would look like for you. We're coming to the last couple minutes of today's session, but I want to show you what life could potentially look like for your board members that decide to use the BoardEffect iPad app, as well as the soon to be deployed BoardEffect Android app, which is coming in April, like I mentioned. So you can see the app really allows your board members to access key news and announcements that have been posted to your BoardEffect, the web browser version of the governance platform. We can view key calendar information and save that to the iPad. We can view and reach out to other board members via the directory, respond to meeting invitations, respond to polls, easily and quickly access historical information via the resource library. So if board members are in a board meeting and they need to cross-reference a financial document that's sitting in your resource library, they can do that then and there. They don't need to go back to a hard copy and sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere, or access that from your intranet, or trudge through their emails. It's sitting in the resource library that's accessible via the iPad app. And you can also access your board manual as well. If you've got that induction or orientation manual, all of that information can be accessible, can be at your board members' fingertips. But let me just quickly show you what life looks like in terms of accessing board papers via the BoardEffect iPad app. We can see we can download past date papers or the January paper, which I'm going to do now. I'm presented with the meeting particulars on screen. Once I've downloaded the paper to my iPad, it's available for offline viewing. So I don't need to download it again unless an updated version has been pushed out to me. I can download that updated version and not worry about losing any previous markups or annotations that I have made. And you'll note that the paper looks identical to that PDF version you saw only a few seconds ago. We can navigate, we can scroll vertically on the screen to navigate to the agenda page. We can use these very basic navigational tools to move forward a page or backward a page, or to a particular page reference, so everyone is literally on the same page. And making navigation that much simpler, we can pull out a sidebar navigation which acts very similar to those bookmarks you saw in the PDF version. Your board members can quickly and easily jump back and forth to whatever section they need to in the board paper, say the financial reporting information in this example, view all that important information on screen, and then make all their markups, use these basic annotational tools to freeform highlight, to strike through on action items, highlight key bits of information, underline, draw on screen, and then lay down additional commentary against the annotations they've made. So rather than just highlight information for the sake of it and not have any frame of reference as to why that's been highlighted, your board members can place additional commentary or reminders on why that is an important talking point for them. And it's very, very easy to track annotations throughout the iPad app. If we move away from an outline to an annotations index, your board members can easily track and identify annotations they've made. You can see there's a few of them here that don't have any descriptions, whereas others do. I've placed some additional commentary to serve as reminders or to jog my memory as to what that annotation is and why it's important to me. So if I go back to, what's this why does not make sense annotation, I can go back to that page 7, zoom in, and there's that particular information that I've have keyed up for a discussion and why it's important to me. And again, we can also search for key bits of information. If you can't find what you're looking for within the board paper, your board members can easily search using a particular word or phrase and then find the information they need that way. So it's very, very easy to find the information rather than just having to search through the outlines, etc. As I mentioned before, we're not saying board members can't have their own hard copy. They certainly can. If you've got Apple AirPrint or wireless print functionality enabled for your iPad, you can print wirelessly. You can even email. You can export an annotated version of your board paper as a PDF, or if you just want an email, a plain text description, a summary for all of the annotations, if it's important for your board members to share their annotations with other board members or senior management, they can do that. It's very, very easy to do. So, and we can also remove automatically, we can manually delete a downloaded document if we need to. So, what I know we've come to the end of our session here, so what I want to do is just talk a little bit about some of the back-end stuff, which is really show you a couple of success stories. But before I do that, I just want to open up the floor to any questions that you might have. I know we've covered a lot of stuff in today's webinar. We've talked about those 10 key principles of good governance and those, those 3 modes of governance, those traits that high-performing boards aspire to, and we've shown you those e-governance tools that you can certainly utilize as well. So please feel free to come at me with any questions that you've got. Now's a good time to entertain them, and I can address them for you. While you're doing that, think of any questions that you have. I'll leave you with a couple of non-profit success stories on screen. Some non-profit organizations around the country that are using BoardEffect currently and have achieved some significant improvements in their governance processes and some significant administrative milestones in taking their board, moving their board away from their paper-based reliance to more of a secure and readily accessible paperless way of doing things. A few of you are interested to look at pricing information for BoardEffect, so I'd be more than happy to engage, touch base with those of you that would like to look at BoardEffect pricing. And just to give you an indication, to ensure that the pricing, that BoardEffect remains financially viable for nonprofits of all sizes, we really look at 2 metrics when calculating the subscription fee. It works on an annual subscription, and we take into account the size of your nonprofit, according to your annual operating budget. Are you what in millions that is, and then the number of users that you actually require. So we take those 2 variables, and that is used to calculate your annual subscription fee. And to give you a range, I know some of you are really interested to learn the pricing. The range, entry level for a small nonprofit, say less than $6 million annual operating budget a year, no more than 20 users. It's an entry-level fee of $4,800 per annum, working all the way up through in the tens of thousands of dollars, $25,000 if you're a much larger nonprofit, over $6 million annual operating budget. You've got multiple boards. You've got a significant number of users you require, maybe in some instances above 80 users. You'll be looking at a significantly higher premium. So it's such a large spectrum, such a large range in pricing that we calculate it specifically looking at those 2 metrics. How big you guys are, size of your organization, according to annual operating budget, and the number of users you require. It doesn't take that much effort getting BoardEffect up and running either. Essentially, Matrix on Board, we deliver BoardEffect as a locally supported solution. So we deliver all of the training for your administrators, all the training, the orientation for your board members, and all of the ongoing help desk support that they need during normal business hours, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You can pick up the phone, send us an email. We're really here to support you and deliver BoardEffect as a locally relevant and supported experience. You don't need to contact the United States at an ungodly hour to receive assistance. So, and you can have BoardEffect implemented and up and running within 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how quickly you want to deploy and roll out BoardEffect. So, yeah, keep that up your sleeve. A couple of other questions have come through. So, I know that there are some great links in these slides. Can you get a copy of them? Happy to supply a copy of these slides to those of you that would like them. Remember that the webinar recording would be available. Because some of you do have questions regarding the implementation process and pricing, I would encourage you to look at taking some next steps. Obviously, visit boardeffect.com.au for some great for some great information on building on what you've seen today in the brief online showcase. If you want to have a look at specific pricing and provisions of BoardEffect, why not reserve a brief 30-minute online tour and we can discuss pricing specific to your nonprofit organization. And finally, if you think that there is if your board might be interested in taking BoardEffect test drive and assessing its best fit potential, why not reserve or request a brief online showcase for your board? Much briefer than an online tour. Obviously, it's usually around about 20 minutes to give your board an introduction into eGovernance and how their work can be quickly and easily streamlined using BoardEffect as their preferred board governance platform. And so I certainly encourage you also to get in contact with me directly as I'll be happy to address the questions that you've raised today. And I know that a few of you have, which I haven't addressed in this webinar, so I'll be coming back to you individually and responding to those questions. So that brings us, we've gone a little bit over time, but that brings us to the end of today's webinar. I really do hope that you've enjoyed and found value in today's session and the content, and most importantly, are now thinking about ways in which your nonprofit board can use eGovernance. So using web conferencing tools and board governance platforms like BoardEffect to not only support and promote good governance, but more importantly, help elevate your board's performance so that they're seamlessly operating across those 3 distinct modes of governance that we talked about. One quick final reminder as well, don't forget, I do encourage you to take our brief online survey following this webinar, as we'd love to get your feedback. We're always looking at ways we can improve our content and delivery of these sessions. So please do take a brief 2 minutes if you've got that time to complete the survey. And remember too, this webinar has been recorded today, so you can look forward to receiving an email from tomorrow with a link to the recording. So if you want to go back and have a look at it, look at these slides, look at the links, you can, and you can even share the recording with any of your key staff or colleagues that have been unable to attend or might simply find value in the content. So I'm going to remain on the line just for a couple more minutes if there's any burning questions that I can address with anyone individually. But for the rest of you leaving us today, thank you once again for attending today's webinar, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your morning. Many thanks.